next to us is a 1968 GMC long bed. This is a farm truck out of Texas. It's been beat up and hammered. The bed is incredibly rough condition. We're going to be taking the bed off, converting it to a short bed. To help us with the short bed conversion, we have the Classic Performance short bed conversion kit. It comes with these really thick 1/4-inch steel brackets that go in the frame to reinforce the frame after we make the cuts. And it's got this easy to use template that's going to show us where the cuts belong. It's got drill hole guides for the relocating the bumper mounts, for relocating the back of the bed, and then it's going to guide us at the front of the frame for the overall length that we're going to cut out, as well as relocating the rear cab mount. And then we have all of the sheet metal that we've got from AMD, Auto Metal Direct. They make really everything that you need for a long bed or a short bed. It really comes complete. You got wheel tubs. These come two ways. They have a wheel tub that's an extra 4 inches deeper for a bigger tire. This is the OE width that we're going to run on this truck. They have everything for the tailgate and the latches. The tailgate comes 3 ways. You can get it lettered with GMC or with Chevrolet, and they have a smooth tailgate. We're going to do a separate video. You can click the link below. We'll show you how we build the bed. With that, the first step that we're going to do here is take the bed off this truck. We got the bed off and out of the way. We're going to start working on taking this rear bumper off and that hitch assembly. At the same time, I'm going to try to feed through here and get the wires and other things that we're not going to use out of the way to make cutting this a little bit easier. Some of the differences, more unique things I'm seeing here on this truck is, for instance, these coil springs over the shock, this coil-assisted shock setup. Done maybe a long time ago, in the 60s and 70s, this might have been a more popular way to try to help carry more load in the back of the truck. They have a tendency to break the shock studs off. Something else a little bit different here, this is a long bed truck. It's a one-piece dry shaft. Often there's a carrier bearing here for the long bed trucks. And this is a GMC, and it's a leaf spring truck. And most of the GMCs were a leaf spring, while most of the Chevrolets had a trailing arm and a coil spring. So it's got a lot of differences, and just in case you wanted to make some changes here, this could become a trailing arm and coil spring truck down the road. Really the frame is more or less the same. We just got some different cross members that we need to add in. We're going to cut off the exhaust, get that out of the way because we're not going to reuse these cherry bombs, and then take the dry shaft out. The engine and transmission are still in the truck. If you had a running truck and you were doing this at home, you don't need to do anything up there with your engine, transmission, all of that. From here, we're going to loosen up all these cab mounts, and we're going to raise the back of the cab just slightly. We're going to take this cab mount out entirely on the frame and relocate it. When you do that, just make sure that you've got the doors closed and pay attention to the sheet metal, that you don't lift the back so high. You start to bind and dent the sheet metal. Okay, so now that we have the rear cab mounts, the rubber removed, we're going to remove the actual cab mounts from the chassis and these forward bed mounts. We're going to use an air chisel and an air hammer to break the heads off and then hammer the rivets out. It's very loud, but it goes really fast, so we're going to use that method. There's other ways you can do it with a drill or a die grinder, but it's going to take a lot longer. This is the fast way. So we ran into a little bit of a challenge right here, and that is, being that this is a leaf spring truck, this template doesn't quite fit on the chassis just yet with the leaf spring shackles up here. On that note, I've been working 20 years at Classic Performance Products, and this is the first time I've seen one of these trucks that I get to work on that has an actual leaf spring. So I'm 20 years in, and this is my first time seeing a leaf spring. They're not very common. There's solutions around this. It's not difficult. What we're going to do is just take off these rivets for the shackles here, and then we can put the template on and drill the holes. The bumper mounting hole is going to be underneath the shackle, so it's just going to be much easier to work anyways once the shackle is not up there. Okay, it took us about 15 minutes to get this leaf spring shackle up out of the way. We've lined up the end of the frame with the end of the bed mount. The new bed mount is going to be here. We've got the mark we're going to make where we have to cut the end of the frame off, and then we have bumper holes that are also laid out back here where we're going to drill the bumper hole. We have the frame cut now. We cut the holes at the back that are going to mount the bed. We drilled the holes for the bumper brackets. The bumper bracket's going to slide inside the frame. We had the shackle off. That made it easier to get in here to drill this last hole. It really makes, it's the way to go. Trying to drill it from inside the frame would have been really difficult. So no matter what you're doing, it'll be easier to just take that shackle off. The template will fit right up on there. Okay, we got the templates up on the side of the frame, and we're going to drill the 3/16 pilot holes through the forward section of the frame before we make our first cut. We drilled these 4 pilot holes in the front. These are 3/16 pilot holes. And these 2 in the back. When we put our reinforcing plate in, it's going to have this bolt pattern of these 4 and these 2, and it's going to match up, and that's what controls our length front to back to make sure that these 2 holes and these 4 holes are the right distance, which is going to be what that cut is. It'll all be controlled because of this template and because of the reinforcing bracket we're putting in.
We're at the point of no return. We're going to start cutting. I'm going to use a cutoff wheel. There's multiple ways to cut the frame. You can use a Sawzall. There's not a whole lot of space in there, so we're going to start off with a cutoff wheel and see how we do. And we're loose.
So just like that, cuts off. The template still has one more use, and that's going to be to relocate the cab mounts. The original cab mount hole will line up in one of these 2 holes. It's labeled for which year you're working on, and you're going to drill a new pilot hole, and then we'll drill it out for the cab mount. So we need to save the last piece of the template. That's good. Perfect. Now, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just going to come through and prep the frame a little bit to get this rust off and a lot of this Texas farmland. And that way later, when we install our brackets and we're nearing the end of this, we'll have a nice clean area to be welding to. And we can probably weld the entire perimeter from underneath the cab and just help make the insulation that much more solid. All right, so now we're going to use the template for the last time. This is going to help us locate the cab mounts to the right location now that everything's been shortened. It's really straightforward. It has the 63 to 66 alignment holes and a 67, 72 because they're different. And it's really straightforward. We just slide this over the chassis. When we get it into here, the hole's going to line up. This says 67, 72. We're going to temporarily just put a nut and a bolt in it so things don't move. So that we're now going to drill the matching hole, follow the lines over here. It's going to be a 1/4 inch pilot drill, and then we're going to drill it out to 3/8. Put the body mount on with 1 hole, position this thing level. The body mount, sometimes in disassembly here, the body mount will have sprung open or be crooked. If we gave you more than 1 hole, you might have this out of position. So it's 1 hole, line it up, make it level to the chassis, and then drill your remaining holes, and everything is going to line up the way it's supposed to be. This bolt is snug. We could adjust the mount up and down. We're zeroing our level on the chassis, and then we're going to zero the bracket. Well, we're pretty close. And right there, we'll clamp it and then start drilling holes. So just so that I don't have to work under the cab, I'm putting these in temporary for now and start drilling the other holes in this reinforcing bracket. All right, so we're going to drill a couple of more holes in the top of the frame, 1 on each side, on the back half, and then again on the bottom coming up. And we put the 2 holes through the sides of the frame that we had to add into the 1/4 inch steel bracket here. The reason they're not on the template is that we're using, in this case, the original cab mount holes that were back here. And that varies from year to year where those holes are exactly. So rather than make this plate look like Swiss cheese, we're just going to drill those holes here, and same on the top and the bottom. We could pick the spot that works best. When we go forward, we're going to find that the transmission crossmember is going to line up on the frame, and we're going to use that hole and come forward so we can reinstall the transmission crossmember without having to drill a bunch of new holes or have nuts and bolts interfering with each other. I'm going to put in the hardware now for the final time. This is going to start by just going in loosely, so we could angle this over and make it slide into the frame more easily and then align it in the chassis. If you tried to get these tight to start with, they might be a little bit wide when you're trying to put it in, and then you'll end up with a struggle, and it's just simpler to leave them a little bit loose before you put them in. We have the two inner brackets inside the chassis, and we've snugged up the front segment of it. And we put a level on the chassis itself, a digital level where we can make it read 0, and then we're going to raise or lower the back end until we get 0 on the back half of the chassis, and that's where we're going to tighten up all the hardware and then do the welding. So we know front to back that it's a straight line and we don't have the back angled high or the back angled low. And we'll do that on both sides. So it'll just take a few minutes, but that way we're going to get the chassis exactly in a straight line one more time. All right, so we got a few small welds on the chassis right now with our brackets. We're going to finish that up later when we can get the truck up on a lift and have room to actually get in there and make a good quality weld. So at this point, we're going to raise the body back up a little bit. We've got our 2x4s in place, get the jack stands out, and put the chassis back down on the cab mounts. There it is. The Classic Performance Products long bed to short bed conversion has been installed. The bed is on top. It looks really good. You can follow this story and others on the web at classictruckperformance.com.